Hello. It's time for another reading in the Gita series. We are now at chapter 6, verses 5 to 8. One must free the soul from the mind, never allowing the soul to be clouded. The mind can be the great friend of the soul, but the great enemy as well. For the soul that is in control of the mind is certainly the friend. But for the soul who has failed to be in control of the mind, due to dividedness, the mind is the greatest enemy. One who has triumphed over the mind has attained peace. He has completely entered the supersoul. He will be the same in heat, cold, happiness, sadness, honor, and dishonor. By awareness and experience, a soul is focused in his senses, centered and fulfilled. It is said that such a mystic is greatly advanced. He will see that pebbles, great stones, and pure gold are all the same. This is a very well-known verse in the Gita. It's relating in this whole chapter to the yoga of meditation, which is, say, dhyana yoga. And it talks about a very common problem that meditators encounter, which is what to do with the mind during these experiences. Now, you'll remember in the previous video, it's saying that practicing a discipline is essential at the beginning of yoga, and that later on being able to let go of that discipline into naturalness is the further step, but not the earlier step. We talked about that in the previous Gita video. In this verse, in these verses rather, it talks about how to free the soul from the mind, never allowing it to be clouded. So it creates this duality between the soul and the mind. And when you are trying to engage in a practice of some kind, a spiritual practice, a meditation or cultivation type practice, if you've ever tried this, you know this, that you will begin to practice, and if you are a beginner at the practice, and possibly for quite some time after, you will hit into this frequent problem that you're trying to concentrate on whatever it is you're doing, whether it's observing something, repeating a mantra, listening to your breath, watching your belly button, whatever method you're using. In the back of your mind, there is your head making noise, telling you about stuff, having this running dialogue with you maybe, conversing with you about things you have to do later, things you should have done earlier, what's going on with Fred, your friend or whoever. You're thinking about the TV show you were watching. Any of these things are going on there. And so there are different approaches of how to deal with the noise of the mind. The mind comes out of dividedness, right? And in verse 6 it says, if the soul is in control of the mind is certainly the friend. Well, what does this mean? It means that if there isn't a conflict between the soul, that is your true nature, and the mind, then the mind is in its proper place. But if the mind is out of control, this is because of dividedness. This is because you've created this sense of separation where you say, well, I'm the mind and this other stuff is just a body or something like that. So then trying to turn around and get back into this state of wholeness, your mind rebels against that because it sees it as a threat. The mind becomes the greatest enemy. There's this saying that the mind is a good servant but a poor master. And this is because the root of what we would call the mind in the context of the spiritual practice, which is to say that internal voice that seems to come out of an intellectual source that expresses everything from desires, doubts, fears, ambitions, and most of all, that acts as a source of distraction from what is actually physically present, and instead leads you immediately into separation. Sometimes it's triggered by something physically present. You see a cat and you think, well, did I remember to feed my cat? I don't know if I fed my cat, right? But it takes you away from the experience itself, right? You see a cat, but you're thinking of your cat back home, or you might see someone on the street and think, oh, is that Ed? I owe Ed money. Oh no, it's not Ed, but I still owe Ed money. I've got to do so. So your head is completely in a different place. It moves you away from uniting to the situation, to what is happening in the here and now. And in that context, this is a product, more than anything, of fear. And it is a fear that might manifest as a fear of insecurity, a fear of being humiliated or being attacked or being helpless or any of those things, those instinctual kind of human fears, which are a very normal thing to experience, and manifesting itself in all kinds of neuroses. But the more fundamental fear is the fear of dissolution, which is to say, to the fear of ceasing to exist, right? The death fear. And so in that fear, your mind is afraid of the act of spiritual union, of connecting and being whole and one, because you say, well, my ego is an individual thing, right? So what happens to that if I try to connect to the whole? I have to stop being absolutely everything I am in order to become a part of this superior unity. Because I define myself as not everything around me, right? The mind always defines in dualities, and those dualities are negative dualities, right? What is an apple? Well, fundamentally, an apple, you're going to define it as like a fruit, which is not a vegetable, as an apple, as in not an orange, right? And it's a red or green, but that means it's not blue, right? And in all of these contexts, the mind has to define things only by comparison and by saying this is not that, right? That is the logical process the mind uses, a sword that cuts through everything and divides it in half and says this is A and A is not B, right? So if you become part of this united whole, if you achieve spiritual union, then how can you continue to exist when you define me as not everything else? If you become one with everything else, there's no me anymore, right? So the verse says, one who has triumphed over the mind has attained peace. Now, how would we say, how is triumph over the mind defined here? It is defined as someone who is completely united with the supersoul. And it says, he will be the same in heat, cold, happiness, sadness, honor, and dishonor. Now, this is a frequent source of discussion, you could say, in a spiritual context. What does this mean? Does this mean that a person who has become one with the supersoul doesn't experience heat, cold, happiness, sadness, honor, and dishonor? Well, clearly that's not true, because it says right here, he will be the same in heat, cold, happiness, sadness, honor, and dishonor. So he can experience all of these things. What doesn't change is that he is in them. He is there and present and experiencing them with totality. And he's going through those experiences as a complete person, and not as a person who is half here and half somewhere else, right? By awareness and experience, a soul is focused in his senses, centered and fulfilled. So the answer to how to achieve that union is by awareness, which is to say to be internally aware of your being, and by experience, which is to be externally aware of your union. And both of those require you actually showing up. It requires you being total. It doesn't require you hiding away inside, right? The more you try to deny your humanity, the more you try to deny that you're part of the universe, the less you're going to be likely to unite to the whole of creation. Because you are by definition trying to say, I'm not this, right? I'm not that. That's evil, I'm not this. That's unenlightened, I'm not that. That's scary, so I'm not that. And so you stay away from those things, thinking that this is going to somehow purify you and make you more united. No, the answer is right there. Awareness and experience allows the soul to become focused in the senses, centered and fulfilled. The end result is when you see pebbles, great stone, and pure gold as the same. So if you understand that a piece of rock, a nugget of gold, a pebble, that these are all things that are part of this one broad picture, right? And that your experiences, it's not to say you're not feeling your experiences. On the contrary, it means you are completely engaging in your experiences. But you understand now that you don't have to be the center of those experiences, and you don't have to pursue those experiences in a separate way from the whole of this flow of creation. That's everything for today. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe. And if you like this video, check out the rest of the Bhagavad Gita playlist, but take a look at the other playlists in this account as well. And if you're interested in a program of spiritual training, in particular, look at the playlist of the Yifa Society and consider joining the Yifa Society to learn a structured and progressive curriculum of spiritual cultivation. Also, be sure to sign up, the links are in the description below, for the Yifa Society blog, which is for the newsletter of the Yifa Society blog, which is a monthly newsletter that you will receive in email, and it's got a collection of all the recent teachings of the month, as it were. And at the same time, when you subscribe, you will get in the response email to your subscription a link to a free PDF of the Path and the Power. And just like this is the Bhagavad Gita, and here we have the Ching. The Path and the Power is a interpretation and commentary on the Tao Te Ching. And so you can get it for free on PDF when you subscribe to the newsletter. Thank you very much. See you soon.